I emasculated my ex-husband 3 specific ways: control, criticism, and comparison. I criticized everything that he did and told him how it should have been done better. And perfection was the standard that I held for him, so nothing was ever good enough.
This woman basically made her husband wimpy by controlling. Because he is no longer the leader, she became the leader. Welcome to the Father Leo Show, where I'm dishing out faith, culture, and commentary. And in this episode, we're going to determine whether or not your husband, your dad, your father is a wimp or a true man of God. But before we jump into it, please make sure you like, subscribe, share, and comment. Let us know what you think are good qualities to make a good father. And as always, we can only do this with your support. So please go to patreon.com/thefatherleoshow, subscribe and support us at any level, and you get access to some great content as well as some special perks. So in the celebration of fathers, especially in this month of June, as at least the United States celebrates Father's Day, let's just jump right into it and ask ourselves, is that man, that father, that husband, is your dad a wimp? Well, if we talk about faith and fatherhood, we have to see that obviously Jesus gives us the perfect example of what God the Father is like. Not only obedient and strong enough to carry the cross, and by the way, strong enough to conquer death, but also gentle enough to be seen as the good shepherd who carries the lost sheep on his shoulder. And then if you even just take a look at what St. Paul wrote in his letter to the people of Ephesus, he'll talk about how fathers should not provoke their children to anger, but bring them up in discipline, which means student, and instruction of the Lord, to make sure that they actually know who God is. If you go back a few seasons of my show, you're going to hear how the father's faith helps actually determine the faith of the children in the family. So if dad is practicing the faith, then the children will have a greater chance of practicing their faith in the future. If it's mom only, the chances are much lower. If it's mom and dad, it's the same rate as if dad alone shared the faith. So the father has a great responsibility to raise the children in discipline and instruction. And what is that instruction? Instruction in the Lord. Basically how to grow up and be young adults. You know, if you look at the St. Paul's letter to the people of Colossae, he talks about how fathers should never discourage their children. And I love that word, I don't like the word discouragement, but I like what the etymology of discourage is. And that's to take the heart out. In the same way, the encouragement is almost putting your heart in, because core is the word for heart. So discouragement is just basically taking the heart out of you. And so if people are practicing, if men particularly are practicing their Catholic faith, then they know that children are children of God, that their wives are their responsibility to protect and to get their wife to heaven. That's the key part of it all. But strangely, our world has become incredibly challenged with what it means to be a good father. You know, and so if we were to actually just ask, is your dad a wimp? Sometimes we might think that your dad's a wimp because your dad is more nurturing and supportive, and also you'd think that your dad is wimp because your dad might not like lift weights and such like that. You know, I think dads should do some sort of physical exercise if they are physically capable of it. But really, what we've got to ask ourselves are, what are the characteristics of a good dad? And part of it is going to be a family leader. We have to know that while a lot of people don't like that scripture passage where it says, men, you're the head, and women should be submissive, but that's just the scripture. Men, be the head of your household. You've got to be the leader of your family in all ways, and especially faith. Because if you are practicing your faith, husbands and fathers, and you're practicing it with sincerity and with a real sense of compassion, kind of the compassion that Jesus shows us, then your kids aren't going to see faith as as a mean-spirited thing. Faith is going to be natural. And so what we've got to do is remember that faith and fatherhood, that's a quality for good dads. I came across this video and I'd just like to share it with you because it's just one of those videos that kind of sums it up, especially in our modern era where fathers are just not present. This video kind of explains whether you are a bad father. Check this out.
Listen to this. 5 ways to tell you if you are a bad father. Number 1, when you see a child, you look at your child as a bill. You don't see it as an investment or them as an investment. Women invest a lot of their time and efforts in their children because they see their children as investments. A lot of the men nowadays tend to look at their children as bills, and they need to change that. If you're thinking of your child like that, you know you're a deadbeat father. Number 2, he equates giving money with time. See, I'm gonna tell you something. Giving money is a good thing as a father, but understanding that time is more needed nowadays, especially. More children need your time and you being there opposed to just giving them economics and money. Number 3, he talks reckless about his child's mother. When a father talks bad about his child's mother, it says a lot about them. And I'm gonna tell you why it says a lot, because at one point she was good enough for you to get intimate with. And not only get intimate with, you were unprotectedly getting intimate with this woman. So at the end of the day, learn how to accept her for her, because that's still your child's mother. And you got about 18 to 25 years to deal with that person. Number 4, he sees child support as a bad thing. I'm gonna tell you something. If you have you and a woman and you guys cannot cohabitate or co-parent without there being problems, then clearly you have to involve the courts. And the reason why the courts have to be involved is because of the fact that you and this person can't get along. So sometimes it's better for the courts to do it, and stop looking at child support as a bad thing. At the end of the day, children don't eat love. They eat food and they need money to survive. Number 5, and this one is the most valuable one. When I ask you, are you spending time with your children, and you say, nah, I got a babysitter, or you look at your children as you a babysitter, you can clearly know that you're not a good father. Women don't babysit their children, they watch their children. So I suggest men, you learn how to do the same thing. Stop saying you babysitting your children. I think this is one of the nastiest terms I've ever heard in my life. Men, we don't babysit our children. We watch our children, and we father our children. Don't let this go over your head.
There you have it. I kind of agree with him wholeheartedly. Now, granted, this man was speaking specifically to a black community, and you're going to think, no, it wasn't. No, let's just admit the black community's fatherhood is almost absent in the family life, and so he's speaking because he's talking about child support. Now, granted, that's true for any culture. There's a lot of people, no matter what race they are, but we also know that the highest level of dependent children in America, because their fathers are not available and present, is the black community. It's quite sad. And so he's talking about child support, he's talking about having, unprotected sex, and it's just kind of how I would say a more rough understanding of what it means to be a good dad. But there is a real lesson in all of this. It's about being present. It's about making sure that you're investing in your child, seeing your child as the greatest investment for your family and for your future. And also just knowing that you're not watching your child, you're raising your child. Now, there's one incredibly important thing that's missing here, and that is, are you able to pray with your child? If you can't pray with your children, or at least be a presence of prayer with your children, then it shows that you're afraid to share your soul with them. You've got fathers, dads, men, you have to be willing and brave enough, courageous enough to share your spirit with them. And that's the hard part, because it makes you vulnerable. And in our modern world, vulnerability is weakness. And that's why I'd like to just compare and contrast what culture says about fatherhood rather than what the Catholic Church is trying to teach you how to be. Be more like Jesus, who is the perfect image of the Father's kind of compassionate leadership for the family, which we call human. So let's jump into it now with what culture has done to make dads so wimpy. There was a great video that I saw about protecting children. And this is going to be a little bit of a shocker, but I'd like to share it with you because it has to do with what a father has to be for his children. If not, the children are going to be picked off by the evil one and destroyed by this world, which the devil wants to do. The devil wants to destroy your children. So pay attention to this.
Certain characteristics that you look for in children before molesting them.
In children, yes, but more I also looked at their families. If I thought the father was a threat, I would not approach the child.
That's right. That was coming straight out of a convicted child molester's mouth. That the child, if the child was without kind of supervision and guidance, and especially from the father, what's going to happen? You know, I look at the scriptures again. Who would allow anyone to break into their home? If a thief knew that there was someone strong guarding the home, the thief wouldn't break in. And I think we have to know that. But here's the problem. So many families are being raised without dads, in part because feminism has really emasculated men. And yeah, I blame wimpy fathers on feminist women. I blame wimpy fathers on, how shall I say, a world that wants to take away their manhood because they think it's toxic. You know what's toxic is the liberal understanding of feminism. And so that's why I'd like to just share this with you, because this is kind of the crazy things that this world needs to hear. This is a reality check. This is a reality of how men have become so weak.
I emasculated my ex-husband 3 specific ways: control, criticism, and comparison. I was in control of everything. I controlled how the dishes went in. If he loaded the dishwasher and it wasn't good enough, the way he was going to lead our team, it wasn't good enough. The way he managed everything wasn't good enough. Nothing he did was ever good enough. And then I let him know out loud, like I criticized everything that he did and told him how it should have been done better. And perfection was the standard that I held for him. So nothing was ever good enough, because I was comparing me and him. And I had this self-righteous view of myself that I knew the way and my way was better. And nothing he ever did was enough. And eventually it created a man that was apathetic, that was resigned to not do anything. Why should he show up? If I'm gonna redo it, or if I'm gonna do it better, or if he's gonna get criticized, why should he show up? And then that caused further division in our relationship, because he would say that he was going to do something and then just not. And it created this big void in respect. And where I got it wrong in the respect category was I was waiting for him to show up as perfect in order for me to begin to respect him. I didn't ever respect his effort. I didn't ever respect the progress. I didn't respect anything.
And I think that cut off there, but it says, and that caused the separation or the division to just grow to the point where it's probably irreconcilable. And so this woman basically made her husband wimpy by controlling, because he is no longer the leader. She became the leader. Criticism, which basically meant that, you know, men already suffer with kind of like esteem issues. We just do. And so criticism is just something that we don't know always how to deal with. But if it's coming from the woman that he loves constantly, then it's just going to just discourage him completely. And then, of course, she's talking about comparing her to him. But men are going to start comparing themselves to other men. And it becomes a vicious cycle. And so whoever's watching this, if you're a man, you've got to be in control, not in an authoritative or power dynamic way. When I say control, I'm saying be the head of the household by making God the head of the household. Make Jesus the benchmark for how you're going to run your family. As far as criticism is concerned, men have to learn how to be humble enough to not only hear the criticism, but also take it to confession, because pride is a terrible thing that everyone deals with. But when you're a man and you're responsible for your family, it's almost like you gotta be the best you can possibly be. But if you're hearing criticism, here's what I say. Hear how this is an opportunity for you to be just stronger. And not stronger in comparison to anyone else. Don't compare yourself to anyone else, except for, again, Jesus is the benchmark. If you hear any criticism from your wife or your kids, say, God, what are you telling me through the cries and the criticisms? Because maybe God is trying to teach you something about how to be a better man. And do not let a criticism destroy your foundation. It just can't. You can't be so sensitive that a criticism destroys your foundation and you start playing the comparison game. This is a real struggle in manhood. And then I know this because when I taught in seminary, I could hear the same thing. What was it that was controlling a seminarian's mind when they heard critique or criticism, especially from people who were in charge and entrusted with their formation? How did they receive it? And were they constantly comparing themselves to other men? It became a vicious cycle. We've got to avoid letting anyone control us other than the love of God. That's what compels us. Secondly, criticism. Learn from them and take your sins that are legitimate criticisms against you, take it to confession, And then as far as comparing yourself to other people, might I recommend, join a men's fellowship group, a healthy one that actually makes prayer a preeminent part of their conversation. Men need to learn how to pray together. And why it's like, again, it's the steel strengthens you, it sharpens you, and that's what we need. And so if we take a look at what the world is doing, it's really just destroying us, because it's taking away our understanding of what it means to be a man in a theological perspective. So what I'm going to do is just offer now some comments, some very practical things that men can do to avoid being seen as wimpy. To avoid being a wimpy man, a wimpy dad, a wimpy father, a wimpy husband, I'm going to offer just a few thoughts. And the first is making sure that you're praying with your spouse and praying with your children. That's humongous. And I know I've said it already at the beginning of the show, but it shows where your strength is coming from. It's coming from God. And with God, all things are possible, because God is the omnipotent. So make sure that you are praying with your wife and praying with your kids. The second thing that I'm going to ask a dad to do is to make sure that there is physical things that you do with your family. Do things that are physically going to give you fitness. When we were kids, my dad actually joined us in martial arts. And I always didn't like sparring with my dad because, while I was faster, more flexible, if he hit me, it hurt, and I knew not to mess with him. And I learned that because my dad, my mom and dad both, they were not afraid to be physically disciplining us. They would spank us, and they deserved to do it. And so when I say do things to give you physical strength, I'm not saying to use your strength to overpower them, but to use your strength and to show that you are in need of more strength with good physical activity. Third thing I want to encourage dads to do, not only pray with your kids, but play with your kids. Play with your kids. There was a study out there that I saw that if you can be rough, especially with your boys, and not be so dainty with the girls, showing that they have to experience some setbacks or get knocked down on occasion, a scraped knee, a bruised elbow, just kind of as dads are going to be rough with some of their boys, and then also to be not so coddling with the daughter. Obviously, protect the daughter, but, you got to make sure that they are strong. That if parents can do that with their children, not over coddle them, then your kids are going to grow up just more confident. That's just all there is to it. So make sure that you are playing with your children appropriately. Play with them and not like in a bubble. Because these days, unfortunately, playing is like playing video games where you're not doing anything physical. Get out there and actually play with your children. Under that subset of playing with your children, might I suggest exploring with your children. Take your kids, and you probably think, not everybody has the money to go on a pilgrimage, but it doesn't take much to go to a park. It doesn't take much to go for a hike. You've got to do something that pulls you outside of yourself so that your children don't see your family as just this closed bubble, but really a conduit to a bigger world, to show that you are willing to explore with your children. And then when you actually get to the point where you have a good relationship and you can start talking to your children about age-appropriate things, that ongoing conversation is absolutely necessary. And it's not you simply telling your kids what you think need to be done and, this, that, or the other chores, but be willing just to have conversations about things that your kids are interested in. And sometimes it's hard because they don't want to talk to you. But you've got to at least be willing to then share what's important to you with them. You might not think that they're listening, but they really are. I mean, there are times when I'd roll my eyes when my dad was talking about things, but I remembered what he told me. I was listening because he was willing to have conversations with me. I just think now, as I'm kind of reflecting, there would be times when I'd ask him a question and he'd bring out like a pad and paper and he would draw diagrams, and I'm thinking, ugh. But I remember it. I do remember it. So make sure that you're having regular, ongoing conversations with your kids. And I think the greatest thing is, again, something my dad said, the greatest gift that I can give my children is to love their mother. That's what the guy was talking about at the beginning of my video series, that you have to make sure that you love your spouse. They are your priority, men. You chose to love your wife. You chose that person in your life. That person has to come before your children. So make sure that the priorities are in place. God, your spouse, and your children. And I think that if we have our priorities, then we can say that maybe I'm not going to be a perfect dad, but at least I'm not going to be a wimpy one. I hope that this helps. I pray a special prayer for all men. I pray a special prayer for all fathers who are experiencing tension in their relationship as dads and as husbands. I pray that men will grow strong in the love of the Lord. And I pray that they will truly be leaders to bring their family closer to Jesus. And as always, God bless you. Thank you for watching. I hope that this was helpful. Please make sure you like, subscribe, share, and comment. And please consider supporting us so that we can continue to dish out faith, culture, and commentary. Happy Father's Day, and stay hungry for God.